Hello, welcome to Being Reintegrated. This is Tim Wright. So I've been studying a lot of materials. Sorry for not getting to you very quickly. I've had to deal with a little personal, not personal fallout, but I am part of multiple communities, and so I take people's feedback very seriously. Um, and it's a little bit of a weirdness that I guess I got going on. Anyway, the point is I'm back to talk with you, and what I wanted to talk about was this idea that comes up in Fournier, but it's really not the best, most fun topic. So I was like remiss to say something. And the reason why is because it talks about this experience of nothingness. Fournier goes into nothing like nobody's business. Favre, when he did his study on Fournier, which mine was inspired by in The Simple Initiate, he says that there's a lot of conversation about nothing, and he uses over and over, ideas from mathematics. So essentially, I mean, I didn't want to have to bring out every portion of that. I don't think the nothing talk comes out very easily in Fournier's book, too. So Favre's analysis of Fournier is pretty phenomenal. But even better is Devone. Now, Devone is said to be Fournier's student, and I really like Devone. There's so these two books. Obviously I'm a bookmaker, so I talk about books. And these aren't books that I've written where I'm extolling my mind on everything. These are translations, the best that we can get on the budget that we have, which is little to nothing. Of just making books and trying to get the information out there. So thank you so much for buying the books over at Kim Publishing. You can go to kimpublishing.com. We're constantly, not we, but me, constantly making products for you to use in your research and study of Illuminism. Not only that, but this isn't like bookmaking from a corporate perspective. So, I mean, yeah, as a bookmaker, I can make tons and tons of books, but I'm trying to only make Illuminist books. So, any books on Kim Publishing are not just books that I've gone out there and acquired to go ahead and make because I want to be some kind of successful bookmaker. What they are is books that will lead you to this illuminist understanding. So I can say nothing better than Devone and Fournier. But Devone has a tendency to tell us about this like very negative perception of how things are. And what you should know is that this is high grade Elucoan material, even though it doesn't seem like it. And so this is one of my grateful feelings that I have toward all of these philosophers, because what we have is Devone telling us through like kind of the disaffected state of being a human being and human narrative and having selfhood and all of the reason that they were grappling with in the late 18th century. So we're dealing with primarily a disaffected French Revolution. I read somewhere recently, I think it was another publisher was saying that the words that are typically associated to Masonic values and virtues were used prior to the French Revolution. So we're seeing that this wasn't just a reactionary state that happened from the poverty and the capitalistic usurping and blah, blah, blah of the bourgeoisie and the petite bourgeoisie. But this was actually a value system that existed prior to the French Revolution. So that being said, Devone is one of these people where if you read him properly, you'll see a lot of information in what he's talking about. I've so far found reference to Kabbalah and Kundalini and a lot of this psychology that we're dealing with Fournier, but we're seeing it in a more refined version with Devone. Now, it's so important to understand that this book is such a gem for Illuminism because all of Devone's writings were burned. But through the study of Favre, we were able to actually pinpoint, or I was able to pinpoint a treatise written by Devone. So a portion of Devone the Divine, you can see that up there, and that is only available through Lulu because William Law's heirs did not want to give rights to publish The Spirit of Prayer, which is a very, very good book. However, if you don't read it in context of Devone, it kind of just falls into what all of this stuff has become, which is like a wonderful theosophical conversation about some great things, but we really don't want to pinpoint what it is. And what we do pinpoint is what's talked about, and that is the selfhood which exists of the composite sinner, which again Devone talks about in his what was a commentarial treatise, and it's in French, but basically it's the voice that cries in the desert is the name of the title. Now, Favre, in his article that I was just talking about in the History of Religion, says it was by Lodo, but it wasn't by Lodo. In another book, Favre tells us that this treatise was actually a book that was done by Devone. And I go about all of this in the introduction. But the introduction essentially says that what we thought was Saint Martin, and we, meaning Illuminists, because this was what Stanislaw de Gaeta said was written by Saint Martin. It was actually written by Devone. And I found a French copy of The Spirit of Prayer with Devone's treatise in it. And so it was in Kirchberger and the Illuminism of the 18th century of Favre, that I found this key, which was this new book that we have translated. I'm going to the actual text. It was basically a commentary that Devone did on the Elukoan. So by the time you get to the treatise, the cries that are done in the desert, essentially, you should be a 5th degree Elukoan. If you're not, the book will seem like a kind of cry against materialism and, oh yeah, you're unhappy. But really, this is one of the foundational bases in the 5th degree. So what you learn in the 5th degree of the Elukoan is how to renounce, not selfhood, but what Devone calls the composite center for the actual center. And a friend of mine recently told me some information that ties to the first few degrees of the Elukoan for the blue band. Now, I recently had some other friends in another community experience the blue band for the first time. And so some of my detractors and criticisms have come from people who are not even in the Koan. So you better know your stuff. Not if you come at me, but like if you start making comments that are offhanded and think that it's not going to be analyzed, dissected, and parsed out. I mean, this is something I'm very passionate about. And I've read almost everything there is, although there are some things which the Frenchies have done, which I haven't done. One is Gerard Gendet's Figurism and Illuminism, which is a masterful commentary on the treatise of reintegration of beings, which I stopped my commentary because it's just so masterfully done. The other is George Kurtz's commentary and translation with extensive footnotes in 3 volumes of the Manuscript of Algiers. Now, I was thinking of, going out on a limb and telling people what the differences and nuances are. But I've also found in my Gnostic studies, because I happen to be associated with those communities too, that people who pick up the Green Book not only don't know that it's a personal notebook of the workings of Grainville, but that even when you see the personal workings of Grainville, if you don't have a particular understanding, which we teach in the Order des Coens Ressuscités, you won't understand what all this is for. You're not going to just be able to sit in, observation of this rite and figure it out. It's not going to happen. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to exalt your self-importance. You're going to talk about things you don't know about, and then you're going to feel like you have this thing under your control, and a self-narrative will come out where most people will get to a state of inflation in their knowledge and exposure to this stuff, and they kind of associate themselves with being experts. Now, not all. Some people can just see it as, we know that energy and mass put together, blah, 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 and it's a science for them, which is what Saint Martin says in 10 Instructions, that this is a esoteric science. But most people won't do enough study to get into it. Anyway, so that's all the background that's needed for Devon. Now, it's on Lulu, so the book hasn't been as readily available to people as I would have liked it to be due to Amazon's copyright law. But it's on Lulu, and you can go to kimpublishing.com, and there's a link right there to go to Lulu and grab Devon. Also, it was said in the mislabeled book by Franz Baader, which is the Mysteries and Secrets of Martinus de Pasquale, but basically it was never that. It was a commentary on the Elucoan Grand Profess stuff by not René LaForester. It's it's the first editor, Philippon. It was by Philippon, who was the first editor of the Treatise of Reintegration of Beings. So what we're finding is that the book Les Enseignements Secrets de Martinus de Pasquale, which was supposed to be by Baader, is not really Baader. It's Jim lies in Nouvelles Notices Historiques sur le Martinisme et le Martinisme. And, I butchered that, of course. But it was a pseudonymously written thing by Chevalier de la Rose Croissant. But it's actually written by René Philippon. And he says that Devon was probably the author of the Red Book. That is profound, because what was given to Saint Martin by Devon, who was the chief archivist of the Elucoan during his time, was not even taken by Saint Martin, but was found in the Lyons and Selesme by Amadou and called Saint Martin's Red Book. But I I worked on this with the unknown emulator and an unknown emulator, and we have reproduced an interlinear version of the Red Book. So what you're seeing is probably, nobody can prove me wrong, but we'll just speculate. Probably you're seeing Devone's Cliff Notes of the Elu Cohen degrees and some of the nuances which an unknown emulator thinks were kind of pious statements that were done by Martinez himself. So it says things like here in number 279, it is because man does too many of the things he wants that he can no longer do those things his guide would want. For his guide being sovereignly good, man's will must be null or at one with his own, and this is the pitfall or masterwork of wisdom. So it's stuff like this that if you know what you're reading, you can really get some mileage out of this Red Book, which I have a copy, so I could go through each one of the phrases, which I won't, because I feel like that's a little bit too intrusive and trespassing. I think the Red Book is good for when you know what to look for and you read it, it'll start to become these quippy sayings that will redirect you to the actual thought. I don't know. It's not an egregore, but it is definitely a thought system that the Elu Cohen and Illuminism in general provides. That being said, so the new book is The Uncreated Light. Now, what The Uncreated Light is it's a pseudonymously translated book by the Spanish Cohen, which I finally have had access to. I had an archival upload basically given to me by a Grand Master of a Martinist order. And so due to my Elu Cohen enthusiasm and their support on the journey, I was given that archive. Now in that archive is some very special stuff, which this is why I brought up this whole topic. So it's not a tangent, it's basically to bring it up. What the Spanish Cohens knew, and Spanish not meaning Mexican, and what was actually a Spain-centric Kabbalah that came to Brazil and is now called the Spanish Cohen, which I have full records of, and produced The Uncreated Light, which is a translation from Portuguese into English, of course, using GPT. So if you're so multilingual that you can get the nuances of this stuff, then you should be translating. Come to Kim Publishing, produce something, and I will publish it, and then we'll put your work out. Because obviously, if you know these nuances, you need to be published. If not, don't use language as a form of saying that some kind of mysterious doctrine that's ambiguous but undefinable is found in the original language. That's a straw man argument, and it doesn't work anymore. So at first, the books that I produced, were attacked because I don't know French. And that's fine. The Frenchies can have their zone. But what we're finding is that even a lot of this French Illuminism comes from sources such as the Spanish mysticism. And that's what you'll see in The Uncreated Light when you understand Favois's article on Abbe Fournier, and you see it through the lens of the Cohen from Devon. You'll see that what Fournier has been accused of calling nothing is actually a Kabbalistic doctrine, which I have found even in Isaac Luria and Abulafia. So it goes very, very deep, but I don't want to talk about the nuance because it's a little bit too academic to even get into. Anyway, I do have all of Luria's Etz Chaim, which was the books that Isaac Luria dictated to Chaim Vital, and I have those in English, and I've searched them, and I found that Fournier is talking about specifically what Devone tells us in his rants about Christian morality. Basically, Christian morality is what Devone says the golden rule, that he goes into Hillel, so he's very aware of Spanish tradition and philosophical dialogues. So he goes into Hillel and he says, it's been said, don't do that which you don't want done to you. And then he contrasts it with reason. So it's very, very good stuff. But I think Devone was probably a very connected philosopher. And he had a lot of education, because the nuance that he's talking about, you can't just pick up a book and know that. There's no selfhood in existence that can just pick up a book and know. Even Boma in his divine presentations was taught by by his teacher, which some of these names, they get past me real quickly, so it takes a moment of meandering to get to it. But Boma was taught by his teacher, which is believed to be Abraham von Frankenberg and others. So, I mean, we're really not able to just say that there's this divine selfhood that pops up and knows all and can experience and have all. That is a fantasy. Usually what happens is a narrative is taught to someone, and then they have this narrative self-expression that they talk about. And so this is a very interesting thing when you can get into this flow of ideas, which was clearly explicated by the pseudonymous author of The Uncreated Light, which we've translated. So you're seeing a first and second and third kind of recycling of this thinking. Now, the other thing that I did is I contacted the German editor of the critical edition of Franz von Baader's works, and they were gifted to Kim Publishing. So thank you, you know who you are, for providing us with that work. That will be the next effort in trying to not capture, but in trying to present all the Illuminisms of the world in a way that's inexpensive and available to people. So you're not going to have to pay exorbitant capitation fees, which is what you pay when you're a Mason and you finally get to the degree where they give you Willer-Mosey Cohen. Then you finally have paid your way into what Jolie says Willer-Mose was intending the entire time. Now, I've been told that Willer-Mose was rich and he didn't want any money and that he wasn't trying to do that. I don't think it was necessarily about money. It was about authority. He was using the Willer-Mosey Cohen spin as a simulacrum of Martinez. So, it's difficult to prove that people had duplicitous motives, but that's why we've published the Willer-Mosey Cohen in two books. One is The Echoes of Emotion, and the other is The Unknown Agent, which I only made for my personal review, and it happens that I can't make a personal book through Amazon without y'all finding out about it. So if you get it, you get it, but I'm not going to share links to The Unknown Agent. So it's kind of like, if you're good enough at sleuthing, you can get to that book. I've seen a couple of purchases of it, but it's not readily available because The Unknown Agent is essentially what Willer-Mose extracted from Monspe. And in The Unknown Agent, there's my bookmark, a Martinus bookmark. In The Unknown Agent, there is also a page-by-page analysis of the text, which is the English translation of Livre des Initiates, or the Book of Initiates. And then you have like you have a page-by-page analysis again of the topics that are talked about in the actual text. Now it says page 25 because there's a big amount of indexing that was done with the Unknown Agent. But like page 25, you'll see, I'll just read you the topics because this is a very, very good book. However, you may not be able to acquire it. And if you do acquire it, I wanted to give you enough feedback on it so you could really utilize it. So page 25 of Monspe's Rants is about pure being, the emanation of sensible being, the similitude of love, incomprehensibility of beauty, troubles of the senses, power of creation, love's emanation, fertile unity, the fourth image, immaterial work, dwelling of essential beauty, fourth image of innocence, initiation into victory, the fourth by innocent numerical law. So, I mean, this is a heavily peppered book. Every page is that dense. So, what Willermoes somehow misunderstood, and then in Echoes of Emotion, we show the doubled effort of Willermoes to go to Madame R, which is was kind of pseudonymous, but we know who she was. Anyway, so that was his second effort at producing Willermoesian Cohen. This was his first, which was Monspe, who got access to her brother's Grand Professe initiation documents, and then through somnambulism and what I think might have been a form of psychic overshadowing, she really just went to town and gave us information. Now, that being said, part 2 of The Unknown Agent is an analysis summary translation of Paul Violade. So in Alice Jolie, we hear about the crisis experiments and blah, blah, blah of Monspe, but also what happened was Paul Violade published in French Saint-Martin's review of the Willermoesian Cohen. So Saint-Martin talks about this in a few letters, like it gives us information about the documents that are in 5477, which are Willermoes's notes on what the Unknown Agent was doing. So all of this to say that we have the Unknown Agent in her psychism, in her grand exposition of what's going on. Willermoes wrote it down. Monspe actually burned all of her notebooks, but Willermoes was able to acquire them, and in what looked like a neurologically incapacitated state, started writing them down in 5477 from Lyons. But that is a really, really hard manuscript to read. So we have a synthesis of all of that, and what looks to me to be like a translation. So for about 50 pages, we have a translation of 5477 through Paul Violade. Now, it's skeletal, of course, because it's like 100 pages in French, but it goes down to about the right amount. And then we have 5477 summarized by Paul Violade in this book. So this is the fruit of years and years of research and study. I really tried to do my best for my friend in producing this book. He told me that basically that was my assignment and the order that I was in, and I was a researcher. So he was like, you're going to go out and basically get the Society of Initiates material, which luckily was made available in a limited edition book that I had a scan of, and I was able to get it through AI transcribed. So there's errors in all of this stuff. If you could do better, provide a document and we'll publish you. But if you can't, don't criticize the work. Just read it and study it, and try to overlook any errors that might be there, or if it's so egregious that it ruins your ability to engage with the content. Let me know what it is. I'll fix it and refund you the money. Because these books as paperbacks, I've also reduced the marketplace on better books by 50%. So we're modeling this off of the books that are exorbitantly priced. I think they're exorbitantly priced, and I don't really think that they're adding much to this kind of illuminist view of things. So, I became a bookmaker. I started making them. I'm really happy to have them. We have about 10 or 12 so far. I have it, of course, I made it, but I don't have a physical copy of Uncreated Light yet. It just released. So this was primarily to tell you about the nuances that are in these books. I'm very, very grateful that we're at this point right now, because like I said, I could pick up any one of these books and have a conversation with you about them, or, you can read them and contact us, go to the Patreon. Of course, I'm going to ask you to go to places like Kim Publishing. I'm going to ask you to go to the Patreon, subscribe to the Patreon for more of these kind of videos, because it's been a couple of weeks since I made one, so this one is a few minutes longer than the others, but hopefully that gives you a good overview of the kind of material we're talking about. And so we're now into one of the publications of Spanish Illuminism, and the next, and when I get to it, if y'all keep the effort going, we can do German Illuminism, which is a reproduction of some of the studies of German Illuminists, and I think you'll be pretty satisfied with the result that we got. Well, we as a community, not just me, we got as researchers in this field. So German Illuminism is coming, but I got to make all the books, so there's nobody else making me things that I can just publish. If you're a bookmaker or a translator, contact Kim Publishing, and we can go ahead and work out something, maybe produce you with a small amount of revenue overhead for the production of the book. But anyway, the point is that we have just made the Spanish volume, Uncreated Light, and then next is coming the German Illuminism, which I think y'all are going to be very happy about, who have been following these kind of efforts. So thanks for your patronage. Thanks for watching this long ramble on video. And I hope to be able to have more of these conversations with y'all.